they looked like two completely different genetic human beings when they walked into the cage too.
That is true. Yeah, Tito had I don't even know what I would call it, but Tito's always been a guy who pumps himself up really well, and Chael looked kind of like an old man with big arms.
Yeah. Tito looked like he always looks, and Chael looked like the before photo of Chael before he started lifting weights or something.
Yeah, indeed. So, I think now we should just do a roundtable on predictions for all these fights. So, it seems like you're kind of leaning towards Vanderlei beating Chael, but is that official, Gigi?
Yeah, I actually do think he's going to win. Now, some of that is probably because I think that he's just the more exciting fighter. And look, he may just make a mistake and fall into a takedown and get choked out or something. But I think the guy still hits pretty hard, even though we haven't seen him in a while. And I think he should be able to win. I'm not sure if he's going to knock him out though. That's kind of an interesting thing. Is this a 3-round fight?
Yeah, it's 3-round as far as I know, because there are so many other 5-round fights on this show. Goodness knows they can't do another 5-rounder at that point.
And plus, those guys will probably pass out during the fight if it's 5 rounds.
That's true as well. So before I give my prediction, Peter, what's yours?
I agree with Gigi. I think Wanderlei wins this fight. Thing is, I think Sonnen might be underestimating Silva's power here, and he might get knocked out.
How fast do you think it's going to happen there? Are we talking first round, second round, third round? When do you think he gets the lights out?
I'm going to say mid to late second.
All right, that's fair. And as for me in this main event, I'm going to say that I believe Vanderlei Silva wins via first round technical knockout because Chael has become more hype than show at this point, as we've already discussed, and there's just too much personal on this fight for Vanderlei to not go out there and have, as Gigi pointed out, a fight of the night performance like the likes he had against Kung Lee and Brian Stan. He's just gonna, even if this is his last fight ever, he's gonna put everything on this last fight and mustard on top of that. I don't think he's going out there hoping to have just a great show for the fans. He really wants to stick it to Chael Sonnen bad in this.
Yeah.
What about the, oh no, go ahead, Gigi.
No, go for it.
I was just gonna say, when it comes to this fight, I mean, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Hopefully no one on this card overall pulls out late with a drug violation or an injury, but especially with Chael and Wanderlei, you gotta think the drug, issues in the past is gonna mean they're probably being tested more than average.
Well, Scott Coker did address that on one of the conference calls, and he said everybody's doing the drug testing they're supposed to be, and we're 10 days out, and we're pretty confident that all of these fights are taking place. He wasn't exactly saying put that in the bank, but he was implying it.
So, what is the drug testing? Because is Bellator drug tested by USADA in the same way that UFC is, or is this mostly like commission stuff?
The problem was nobody on the call seemed to be able to pin that down because Coker would say that's something the fighters need to talk about, and then when the fighters would get asked about it, they would talk about other things. So we never got a clear picture of whether it was USADA style testing, and all I know is there is testing, but I can't tell you of what nature.
I think it would, I mean, not to say that they should just let these guys do stuff, but, Fedor and Mitrione are not, body guys, but they're definitely powerful guys. I don't know if, I don't know what Fedor had done before when it was the Wild Wild West, but Mitrione, I believe he was probably, fighting, when the drug testing was implemented in the UFC. And then Vanderlei and Chael, I like, who cares? Like, just let those guys do whatever they want.
Yeah. Well, one thing I think we can count on is that considering New York just legalized things within the last year, they're probably not letting guys get away with too much when it's on their turf and they're trying to make sure that everything is above board considering how long it took to get cleared.
Yeah, but I mean, who's really paying attention? I guess that's my thought. Like, I, I wonder what, I wonder if people are paying that close attention to this show to where,
To
you
where
know,
they
it's all,
care?
they care enough to really scrutinize these guys.
Mm. Yeah, I will not go out on the limb and say it's like free reign, do whatever the hell you want, but I do take your point on that. So, let's go ahead and make predictions for the co-main event, or otherwise we could get bogged down in whether or not testing is really taking place. So, what do you think in Fedor versus Matt, Gigi? Who wins?
This one is really hard because Matt Mitrione should win this fight, in a very exciting, you know, duke 'em out, crazy fight. But he gets hit too, so it's like who's gonna have the better chin on this night? I'm still gonna pick Mitrione. I'm gonna pick him to win by knockout, but it's almost like who hits the cleanest shot first to me is who wins, and predicting who that's gonna be is a little hard. This is really gonna be the first time for Mitrione where he's kind of really counted on and really, you know, under the bright lights and, you know, I know he's a football player. He's played under, you know, a lot of, distress before, but this kind of feels like a big deal, fighting in New York, Madison Square Garden. And I wonder how he's going to come out. I'm sure those jitters will be there. He's going to be standing across the cage against a legend. That first round to me is going to be interesting because I want to see how loose he is in this fight. But I do think he is a more talented fighter at this point and probably should win.
I've got him as winning in the first round by knockout, and that's not out of any lack of respect for the last emperor. That's just out of reality creeping into the fact that this guy nearly got blown out by Fabio Maldonado. And not saying Maldonado isn't a good boxer or a capable fighter, but 10 years ago, Fedor would have painted the canvas with the blood of an opponent like Fabio Maldonado. And the fact that in these 2010s that's not happening shows me that Fedor can be beaten by a younger, bigger, hungrier fighter like Matt. So, Peter, what's your pick?
It's a good thing this fight isn't in Russia. I have Mitrione winning as well. I think it might go into the third round though. I don't see it being a 1-round fight. I think, you know, Fedor will bring the fight to Mitrione and Mitrione will get hit a few times, but I think it's going to be a case of Mitrione wearing down Fedor, and then in the third round, I'm not going to say he gets lucky with a punch, but he's going to hit something that Fedor is not expecting, and Mitrione wins in the third, midway through the third round.
All right. Well, Peter, right back to you for Douglas Lima and Lorenz Larkin, the first 5-rounder on the pay-per-view, but not the first 5-rounder overall on the show.
I really like Larkin as a fighter, but my heart is saying go with Lima on this one, and it's going to be close. I hate saying decisions, especially in a 5-round fight, but I'm going to go with Lima by decision.
I've got Lima by decision as well, so you and I are of the same mind on this one. And it's not that Larkin can't make an impact in Bellator. It's just they have set a bar awfully high for him by giving him a title fight in his very first fight. And I think they're actually counting on Rory McDonald being waiting in the wings to challenge Lima after he's done with Larkin. Gigi, what do you say?
Yeah, I think Lima's going to win too. You know, Larkin, I don't think has ever been in a 5-round championship fight before. Not to say that, you know, if you haven't done it before that you cannot do it. You know, Lima's fought 5 rounds a couple different times. Actually, both of them losses in which he did go 5 rounds. But I do think this is going to be a situation where Larkin tires out and Lima probably wins pretty not easily, but I think it's going to be pretty clear cut.
All right, and then we have one that I think is pretty easy and pretty clear cut, and that's Michael Chandler against Brent Premise. I think that Chandler dispatches of him with not no effort, but he does it in the kind of style that we saw the last time he won the lightweight title, where he just demolishes an opponent in one particular round, first or second round. I think he's just got too much for Primus.
I mean, if Primus is going to win this fight, he's going to have to
do better than a split decision. He needs to do that.
Yeah, this fight's not going to the judges, first of all. Primus, I tried to explain to someone, who is a casual fan that should watch this fight in particular, and I said, well, unless Chandler has a degenerative heart condition and can't fight, then maybe Primus has a chance, but in all seriousness, Chandler wins this fight second round. Stoppage.
Alright, Gigi?
Yeah, clear. I mean, it's clear victory. It's kind of a mismatch in a sense, and it seems like this is pretty much an opportunity to make Chandler to look good and for them to set up whatever's next for him.
I agree. Now, speaking of getting set up, Aaron Pico, they want this kid to be a really big star because they've been touting his wrestling credentials for years now, but is Zach Freeman the guy to set him up, or is Zach Freeman going to play the role of spoiler here by being 10 fights more experienced than his opponent? Gigi, your thoughts first.
Yeah, I don't know too much about his opponent. I mean, I've read up that he actually has a pretty decent record.
8-2.
What you're hoping, and there's really no comparison, but you can remember, like, when John Jones was coming up, how he would just, they would put someone who was a little bit better than the guy he beat before, and then he would go through that guy. And so there was this, like, climb. You got to see the climb of John Jones. Whereas, like, the flip side would be someone like Sage, right? Where you're like, this guy's kind of suspect. Let's put him in with someone who's actually okay. And Sage, Sage got whipped, or CM Punk or something like that. That's not this situation. I think what we're seeing is someone like, the rise of a John Jones like guy. So I fully expect Pico to win. I just think the booking is interesting, based on the win-loss record alone. I have no idea how good this other guy is, but it's not like they're throwing him in there with someone who is also 0-0. Like they're putting him in there with someone who has had a decent amount of fights.
Yeah, it's a calculated risk, but based on what they're looking to achieve promotionally, I think they've decided ahead of time that this might be a guy that has a great record on paper, but there's a chink in his armor that a very experienced wrestler can take him down over and over again and dominate him. So I don't think they're going to make Aaron Pico the fool here. It's up to Freeman to prove everybody wrong. Peter, what do you say?
I'm going to say Freeman. I don't know if it's me just being a smartass, but I think it's too much. I know that Pico's been highly touted as wrestling is top notch, but Freeman, the experience is there, over 10 fights more, and I'm not saying I'm tired of people getting shoved down our throats. Oh, watch for his wrestling. It's like, no, let him fight. And this is a perfect test for Pico to show he's more than just a wrestler. That's where Freeman's going to catch him, and that's why Freeman's going to win.
Well, that makes a perfect transition to the one other fight that I absolutely think we have to talk about before we wrap it up. And that's a wrestling fight through and through, and it's a rematch to boot. You've got two of the best wrestlers to ever compete at light heavyweight that aren't named John Jones, and that's Phil Davis and Ryan Bader. Bader got the better of him by a split decision the last time they met, but this time he's got to try to unseat a reigning light heavyweight champion in Mr. Wonderful. Peter, your thoughts?
This will be a lot closer than people think. I haven't looked at the odds recently, but I've got Davis winning by decision here, and it's going to be a very entertaining fight. If there was the old fight of the night bonus, that will go to this fight.
Davis has made the argument that he has evolved more over the same period of time since the Bader fight that Bader has, and that may just be good talk from him, but at the same time, I have watched him grow into being the champion in Bellator and thought that he's looked consistently better in each one of his fights. And it's hard to say with Bader because he got such convincing knockouts over two guys before he left UFC that it's like, now I don't even know, because that could just be a factor of his improved camp and training team, which he talked about when I interviewed him, or it could just be his final two UFC fights were guys that weren't on his level. So I kind of suspect Davis might be right here, but it, like you said, Peter, it'll probably be closer than a lot of people think, and Bader is certainly motivated, but I feel like somehow, some way, Davis will just out-wrestle him a little more than he did in their first fight. Gigi?
I mean, I think I'd take Davis as well, but I kind of disagree with Peter just on how exciting this fight's going to be. I feel like it's going to be one of those wonky decision kind of fights where, you know, you're watching the fight and you're like, these rounds are kind of close. These rounds are not very close. And so it makes it seem like one guy's going to win. And in fact, when you count up the scorecards, the decision, you know, might not be what you think. Because these kind of fights where you guys, you know, you have guys who, you know, I think Bader has some power to an extent. I don't think Davis does at all. And so it's going to be all based on positions and takedowns and, you know, submission attempts. And when you get those kind of fights, they're for a specific audience. Some people will really, really love those fights. But to close the Spike TV show, which is there simply to get people to then go, I kind of want to watch this show now. I don't know if that's the right fight. I kind of wonder if, you know, if ending the show with Pico instead, and if we think he's really good and he gets this, you know, sort of dominating victory, would have been the right thing to move a few buys here and there, because I just wonder, you know, if this fight could be kind of boring, and I'm not sure that's the right fight you want to end this hype show with.
Well, it may or may not be for marketing purposes, but one thing I gleaned from talking to Bader was he actually likes being on Spike TV better than pay-per-view, because apparently he's got a performance bonus for his fights being on TV.
Yeah, but didn't like Uriah Faber say the same thing? Like, I'm not sure if I buy it necessarily that those guys would rather fight on TV than fight on the pay-per-view. I think it's smart to say, because you are fighting on Spike and you want people to watch you. But I'm not sure I actually believe that to be the case.
Well, I can only take what a fighter says as their word, and whether or not it's true is left to be investigated after the fact. But I didn't feel like Bader was full of shit when he said that to me. That's just my impression from talking to him.
Well, I mean, to me, what it says is that he doesn't get his pay isn't any different based on fighting on pay-per-view or fighting on regular TV. Like, that's what it says to me. And if that's the case, sure, but if you believe in Bellator, the company, and you think that this pay-per-view is actually a good idea and is actually going to do good business, you probably would rather be on the pay-per-view. I mean, that's just sort of how the game works in that sense. But if he doesn't get paid any extra, he should sell that he loves fighting on Spike TV, because that's actually what he's doing.
Yes, indeed. So, I think that brings us full circle on this show, so it's probably time for closing plugs, and that's going first to Gigi.
So I mentioned at the top of the show, FightGameBlog.com and the new Fight Game podcast. I said where you could go to SoundCloud. One of a couple of things that we're doing is, Duan and I, who is my boxing guy, he and I were doing a podcast called the Fabulous Four, which is a look back at all the fights between Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, Tommy Hearns, and Roberto Duran. And we got up until 1987, the Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvin Hagler fight. And we took a bit of a break to do some other things. And we are going to be finishing that project, which only has a few more fights left, But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to be re-uploading the audio of the first several shows, so that people who didn't listen to them the first go around are now going to be able to listen to them, and then they'll hit all of the feeds, all of the Fight Game Podcast feeds as well. So people who didn't get to listen to them can download them now and listen to them. And what the summer project is, at least starting in the summer, is me and the booker for APW out here. His name is John LaRocca. APW did a pretty cool show at the Cow Palace in May, and so they're on a bit of a high. But he and I are going to look back at WCW. We're talking late 90, early 91 is about the time frame we're going to start. So you have the end of Sting's original title run. You have Ric Flair getting the belt back, which only lasts for a few months because he and Jim Herd can't get along.
Yeah.
And Jim Herd doesn't want to re-up Flair for his contract, and so he wants to, basically cut it in half. And Flair leaves for WWE, and Sid leaves for WWE, and it's like Sting and Luger are the top two guys left over. It's just such a fascinating time period for me, but also there's a lot of information about that era. All the observers in that era are up on F4W online. And so I'm really able to kind of like dig my teeth into that time period and see what was going on. Why did Flair beat Sting on a non-TV show when he got his belt back? Why didn't he beat him at Starrcade when he was the Black Scorpion? Like stuff like that. We can actually answer those questions now. So we're going to do a series of podcasts on that time frame and just go through, 91 and early 92 and through Flair's run and what WCW was doing at that time. Because it was just such an interesting time period for both companies. So that's the other project. And, just, doing the website and doing the Fight Game the Fight Game podcast, every probably 4 shows a month these days. So yeah, just having a lot of fun with that stuff.
And what about a crossover event with Geekdom 101? Gonna bring in Big D for anything?
So Big D and his partner Draven on the K-Fabulous Lucha Brothers show, I think we're going to recap Great Balls of Fire.
That's an appropriate event for Big D. Yes, I agree with that idea.
But also, what I did is I uploaded all of the WrestleMania 30 for 30 shows. So I uploaded all of those. And so, there's 30 shows, but a lot of them were double shows, so there was a ton of audio there. So if anybody wants to listen to any of that stuff, that we were doing 3 years ago, all that stuff is up as well. And so, all those podcasts are really good, and a lot of people, didn't hear them who may now be listening to K-Fabulous or the Fight Game podcast. So all that stuff is in the feeds and on the SoundCloud page too.
And all digitally remastered in Dolby 5.1 stereo surround sound.
Yeah, all they're like I said, the SoundCloud service is actually really cool. Like you can do so many cool things with it. So it's fun it was fun to put all of those shows back up and make sure, all the stuff was set and, listen to bits and pieces of it. It was pretty fun to do it.
And just to make it clear, I don't want people to think I'm putting something on GG that's not there. I was more being facetious, but at the same time saying I know you've cleaned up the audio a little bit, but I don't want people to think I'm selling them wolf tickets, and you're just saying that SoundCloud provides a lot better options for putting up a show.
Yeah, and embedding and linking and tweeting out and all that stuff. They make a lot of that stuff really easy.
Right, and it's going to be good audio quality to begin with, so that's why I can kid a little bit. But speaking of good audio, I do that every single week with Peter, and I know he's got some plugs as well.
Well, at AngryMarks is Stevie's Twitter handle. I'm at HardcoreCDN. Go check that out. I try to tweet every once in a while, but Stevie definitely has me beat on the social media game, that's for sure.
Well, not on purpose. I'm trying to drag you into that stratosphere with me, so please follow Hardcore CDN, and please follow at Fight Game Blog, and you can always follow at Angry Marks for all my MMA and pro wrestling coverage. But most of all, tune in every Wednesday night for Glove Up or Shut Up, right here on AngryMarks.com, and iTunes keyword Angry Marks. But Peter, what do you always say to wrap it up?
Well, thanks DJ, thanks Gigi for being on the show tonight, and as I always say, never leave it to the judges. Good night, everybody.
See ya.